AMD just reported earnings. The stock is up about 4.5%. Now, a lot of people are wondering if this is one of the best stocks to buy now or not. And there are a lot of people that were waiting for earnings to see what the results were. So let's break down the earnings. Let's look at some valuation metrics, a chart. I'll tell you if I think the stock is a buy or not at these levels. So right now, after hours, it's trading just under $123 a share. Market cap is about $190 billion. Now, this PE ratio you see on your screen is a 12-month trailing. And the reason that's so high at 487 has to do with the Xilinx acquisition. Later, I'll show you some other valuation metrics to see where AMD's at. So before this pop after earnings, the stock was up 83.69% year to date. So it's up about 88% year to date after hours. Now the 52-week high was actually higher, $10 higher than it's at now. It was $132.83. The 52-week low was $54.57. So non-GAAP EPS of 58 cents, that beat by 1 cent. Revenue of $5.36 billion, that's actually down 18% year over year. It's down negative 18.2% year over year, but it did beat by $40 million. The bar, the expectations were pretty low. Outlook. For the third quarter, AMD said it expected $5.7 billion in sales. That's versus an estimate of $5.81 billion. So this guidance is actually light. So AMD has given us a double beat off of low expectations and negative 18% year-over-year revenue growth and slightly lowering expectations for outlook for the next quarter. Here's the press release from the investor relations page. Now here's a quote here from CEO Dr. Lisa Su. We delivered strong results in the second quarter as fourth-gen Ryzen processors ramped up significantly. AI is going to be the focus for this stock, and it'll be interesting on the earnings call just how many times they say the word artificial intelligence or AI. Our AI engagements increased by more than 7 times in the quarter as multiple customers initiated our expanded programs supporting future developments of Instinct accelerators at scale. And honestly, this is why the stock is up. Investors are buying this stock for future growth. For future growth in artificial intelligence. Looking to the third quarter, we expect our data center and client segment revenues to grow by a double-digit percentage sequentially, driven by increasing demand. So some positives here. Now, we talked about year-over-year down 18%. If you look at Q2 2023 to Q1 2023, it's flat. Gross profit year over year is down 19%. Now, if you look again from quarter to quarter, it's up 4%. I mean, looking at year over year, down 1%, down 104%, down 8%, down 94%, down 93%. But if you look at Q1 2023 from last quarter to this quarter, the numbers are starting to improve. Up 4%, up 86%, up 119%, up 122%. You'll notice that the earnings per share is now positive 2 cents. If you look at the last time they reported in Q1 2023, they actually reported a loss of 9 cents for EPS. So let's dig in deeper. AMD, our journey, talks about their leadership product portfolio, their data center and AI growth, strong financial foundation, and more. We're going to look at some segment growth like data center and see if they're improving in those numbers. Leadership products, data center, gaming, embedded, and client. Now, if you've been following this channel, I've covered both Nvidia and AMD in detail, talking about really AI, but not just the hardware, also the software. The next phase for growth, when you think of Nvidia, is really going to be in that software, AI as a service model. And AMD is starting to compete in that area. So AMD is also going to be doing software, AI as a service type model. So even though Nvidia is the dominant player, AMD is starting to develop products that are competing in those areas. And there's a good chance that AMD will be able to capture some of this market share over time. AMD is uniquely positioned in AI. This talks about their data center, their leading server solutions, integrated AI accelerator, AI interface optimized solutions, and more. Okay, so here's the revenue again. $5.4 billion, declined 18% year over year. And it says here as embedded segment strength was more than offset primarily by lower client segment revenue. Client segment revenue was impacted by a weaker PC market and significant inventory correction across the PC supply chain. And we've talked about this on the channel several times as well. When there's a shortage of chips, what happens is customers will stockpile merchandise. You're seeing twofold there. You're seeing a stockpile of inventory and that has to flush itself out. You're also seeing weaker demand from the consumer when they're buying these new products. So GAAP gross margins flat at 46%. Non-GAAP is down from 54 to 50%. Earnings per share GAAP, Q2 2022, again, 27 cents, 2 cents for this quarter. Here's another view of that P&L, showing you the revenue down 18%, gross profit down 19%, and so on. So when you look at revenue, we had a ramp up here really in Q3 of 2021, all the way up to Q2 2022. This is $6.6 billion, and it fell to $5.6 5.6, it was flat, and then it fell again to 5.4 billion, and it's flat. Gross margins have fluctuated between 42% and 50%, right now at 46%. This is an important slide too. You can see the earnings per share. So back in Q3 of 2021, positive 75% earnings per share, then 80 cents earnings per share. This actually dropped down. Q4 2022, they were only positive by 1 cent. And then Q1 2023, that loss of 9 cents, now back to positive 2 cents. Now, some of this again has to do with the Xilinx acquisition, but not all of it. And you can see that we've had a big impact here over the last year or so. So the question is, has AMD turned the corner? Is this the sign of now going to the other direction positive? And I think that investors are assuming that, which is why the stock is up after hours. Now, anytime you have these earnings reports, the stock could be volatile and it could go higher or lower depending on what's said on the earnings call. I try to get these out to you as soon as I can. So cash and cash equivalents, pretty strong here on the balance sheet. You've got Q2 2023. This is in millions, so billion, $6.285 billion. And this is up 6% quarter over quarter. And a note here, inventories are up quarter over quarter to support the continued ramp of advanced technology products. So they're spending money, they're building up inventory for these AI products. Data center revenue is actually down 11% to 1.3 billion from 1.5 billion. Operating margin fell from 32% to 11%. Some strategic highlights to notice here though. Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, and OCI announced new cloud instances powered by 4th gen processors. AMD now powers 121 supercomputers in the top 500 list and 7 of the top 10 supercomputers on the Green 500 list. So some positive momentum here, but I think the market's trying to look forward a little bit. Here's the client segment. Revenue fell from 2.2 billion to 1 billion. That's down 54% year over year. Operating margin 32% to negative 7%. Operating loss of 69 million versus 676 million positive a year ago. Gaming segment revenue also down from 1.7 to 1.6 billion dollars, down 4%. The operating margin did improve though from 11% to 14%. And they have several new product offerings in all these different segments that I'm talking about. And you can see them on the right-hand side under strategic highlights. Embedded segment, some positivity here. 1.3 billion to 1.5 billion, up 16% year over year. Operating margin up 1% from 51 to 52%. So financial outlook. We talked earlier that guidance is a little bit weak, although data center and embedded segments are expected to grow year over year. So quick snapshot. Revenue, $5.4 billion. Data center and embedded segments, 50% of revenue, over 50% of revenue. Gross margin, 46%. The non-GAAP gross margin, 50%. And then earnings per share was 2 cents. The non-GAAP EPS of 58 cents. So the stock right now is trading at 122.60. It's up 4.25%. Now, if you look at the 52-week range, it was $54.57 back on October 13th of 2022. And that was a great buy, of course, down at $55. Our target in Discord was 75 or less, and then it was a pound the table buy, 65 or less DCA. 52-week high was just on June 13th, and it was $132.83. And AMD only has about 1.85% short interest, so not a lot of people are trying to get in front of this one. So we're going to have some goofy numbers here. This is Fidelity. Price to sales ratio showing about an 8. The PEG ratio 50.39. Again, I think some of these numbers are messed up from that Xilinx acquisition. The PE for next year's estimate, according to Fidelity, is a 27. Now, of course, that's before the 4% pop after hours, and this year's estimate is 40.2. Let's look at some other valuation metrics here. So advanced micro devices, PE ratio forward. That's that light blue color. 41.21. The current PE ratio is in this orange at 513. Again, that's wonky because of that Xilinx acquisition. Now, price to sales ratio is something important to look at as well, and it's sitting right now at 8.296. So let's look at historic price to sales ratio. Now, this chart's going to take you all the way back to 2009 and then to present. And the company is much different now than it was back then. You can see back here 1.2 price to sales. So if we just look at, say, December 31st, 2018, this was a 3.08 price to sales. And it's very high. It was 11.42 price to sales. This is December 31st, 2020, during really the heart of the pandemic. A dip down to the 8s, back up to 10.76. It fell off a cliff and got to 4.08 at the lows. And now it's trading at about 8 on this chart. And I showed you in the previous chart, it's closer to an 8.3, 8.4 now at the pop. So here's the reality. It was probably ahead of itself and expensive when it was 10 and 11 price to sales. In a bull market, it could easily go back into those those levels. And that's when you'll start to see some heavy resistance because you're going to see a triple top on this PS ratio. So if the stock went up another 30% from where we're at now, we'd be back at about a 10.7 price to sales. And I'm not saying that's going to happen for sure. I'm just looking at some quick napkin math to give you an idea of where the stock would have to go. So if it's trading at $122.38 right now, and I take that times 1.3, that's $159 a share. And I'm not saying it's going to $159 a share, but that's the napkin math there. So for perspective, let's just compare price to sales ratio AMD to Nvidia. So Nvidia is this orange color. It's about a 45 price to sales. This purple down here is AMD, around 8.3. So I'm not saying that AMD has to be a 40 price to sales or anything like that, but I'm saying what the market might do is they might look at something like this and say, hey, Nvidia is 45 price to sales and AMD is only a 9. Let's run up AMD to a 15 price to sales. And I'm not saying that's a reason to buy the stock or that that's going to happen for sure. I'm just trying to provide you some logic that Wall Street analysts might look at. You say, well, there's only two players, AMD and Nvidia. So if Nvidia is already topped out, it's too expensive. What else can we buy? This is going to be the second best option with AMD. AMD is probably going to have 15 to 20% of that AI total addressable market over time. And so it's possible the stock can go higher just simply off logic like that. And again, you have to be careful with that. It's not a reason to buy the stock. But honestly, these earnings weren't really that spectacular. I'll share some commentary, some thoughts here in a second, as well as a chart. Now, before we do that, if you're new here, subscribe to the channel, click that bell for notifications. And if this video is helpful, drop me a like and drop me a comment. And I need to announce this video is sponsored by the Motley Fool. If you'd like to see the 10 best stocks to buy now, visit fool.com/firedupwealth. Also, join us in our private community, Patreon Discord. We're crushing it in there. It's a great home for investors. Join us. Visit patreon.com/firedupwealth. Okay, next we're gonna look at a chart and then I'm gonna give you some real talk commentary, so stay tuned for that. When you see orange on your screen, that's a previous chart day. We do chart day every single Wednesday at 9 o'clock a.m. Eastern live in Patreon Discord. Again, if you wanna join us live every single Wednesday, visit patreon.com/firedupwealth. Now, normally you would see yellow for today's chart day, but since I'm just gonna tell you here, you're not gonna see any yellow. So this orange here, this is previous chart days. Last time we talked, said $107 support. Downside would call for 102, the 99, the 92. Of course, we've had upside, not downside. Upside of 127 and 133, and I said earnings will decide. We just had earnings. The golden opportunity where a lot of people were buying this stock was under that $75 range, closer to 60. You can see it got down to $55 here back in October. This was a great opportunity to buy. Many of our members were buying in these levels between $55 and $75. But the question you have is the stock still a buy now or not, and where's it going next? So this dotted blue line here, it's kind of hard to see post-market. It's at 122.84. This next stop is this R2, and it's basically right above that around $123. Once it breaks that 123, this R3 up here is $128.59. And this very top line is just above $133 a share. So right now, it looks like the market is excited about earnings. Maybe that they were better than some people thought, some people feared, and really looking forward to the potential with AI. So if you want my honest thoughts, real talk, this earnings report, it really wasn't that great, but it seems as though a lot of people are thinking that AMD has turned the corner and that you're going to see some positive momentum from here. And so the stock probably goes higher. It probably goes to $130, $135 a share. And that's assuming if the market stays bullish. If the whole market decides to roll over, this stock could easily go back below $100, and that would be the area where I'd really want a dollar cost average and load up. I honestly don't think that AMD is a cheap stock at this price. And if you were bullish and you had conviction, you were buying the stock at $75, $65, and $55. And I know you don't want to hear that, but that's just the truth. So if you missed the boat, if you're a new investor, you have to decide, do I want to pay $120 to $125 a share, knowing that this stock could easily drop 25%, really at any time on some kind of negative headline if the market rolls over and so on. So it does have upside in the short term, but that upside in the short term probably isn't that significant. Now, I could be wrong. And a lot of times when momentum comes to name, you saw what happened to Nvidia. So I wouldn't be surprised if AMD goes to $160, but I wouldn't be surprised to see it under $100 either. But a lot of people look at AMD and say, this stock is so cheap, I'm not going to buy Nvidia, I'm going to buy AMD because it's a better price. Both of them are expensive, and Nvidia justifiably should have more premium than AMD. They are the king of AI. And you could say that Nvidia is too expensive or whatever you want. The question is, what premium should AMD have? Certainly not as much as Nvidia, but perhaps more than where it's at now. Now, the main difference though, if if you look at Nvidia earnings, those were pretty significant. They were blowout earnings that really made you sit back and say, wow, AMD's not doing that. All this AI that we're talking about, a lot of this is in progress. It's future. And you might not see a lot of the revenue for, several quarters from this point. So investors at this point, I mean, they're forward looking. And if you're buying this stock as a long-term investment, I think it's a good long-term investment. So don't get me wrong. I'm very bullish. This is one of my top holdings in my $1.5 million growth stock portfolio. We also own this stock in the Fired Up Wealth community portfolio. So if you're a long-term investor thinking 5 years out, it's probably still a buy at $120 a share. But you have to understand the risk with that too. So I hope this was helpful, guys. Make sure you subscribe if you're new here. Click that bell for notifications. Drop a like, drop a comment. Have a great rest of your day. Take care.